Welcome to Midlife Matters. I'm Marie, and each week I'm joined by my friends Julie and Mindy to talk about all the topics keeping women in the middle years up at night. Today we're talking about the pelvic floor. This area of our body impacts so many things, including posture, bladder control, and sex. It's so important, and yet many women don't know very much about it. Join us as MaryEllen Reider helps us better understand how the pelvic floor affects our health. Hello, listeners. Today we're talking about something that affects most of us in the middle years, but that a lot of us don't know much about: pelvic floor health. Most of us have laid off jumping on a trampoline after giving birth, and we've all been told for years to do our Kegels, but that's about the extent of our knowledge. Mindy, I didn't start hearing about pelvic floor health until just a few years ago. How about you?
I know it's something that I wish that I knew more about earlier, because I did have to stop jumping on the trampoline, and I do like to work out, and I didn't realize it was a thing.
Right. Well, I knew it was a thing. I just thought it was inevitable, and I hoped that my problems might not start until later. Like, that was all the education I had. But a few years ago, I was in a Facebook group, and somebody who was younger, like probably in their 20s, had just had a baby and was talking about pelvic floor health. And she mentioned pelvic floor therapy. And I thought, is this a thing? How could I be in my 40s and never even heard of this? So since Mindy and I are not experts, we've called someone in to answer our questions. MaryEllen Reider. She is the co-founder of women's wellness device called the Yarlap, which helps maintain bladder control and tone pelvic floor muscles. MaryEllen, welcome to Midlife Matters.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Yes, we're excited to have you because, like we've clearly indicated, we really don't know much about this topic, but I feel like as women in midlife, we should be more educated. So we cannot wait to find out what you are going to talk about today. And why don't you give us just a brief summary of who you are and how you came to be working with pelvic floors?
I know it's a weird area to be super involved in, but my name is MaryEllen, and I am one of the co-founders of Yarlap, which is a medical device to treat urinary incontinence. And my other co-founder is actually my dad.
Oh, okay.
So it's a father-daughter company.
Great.
He is a medical device engineer, and he has had all these different devices for this issue and for pain relief and muscle education. And I was into women's health, women's rights, and was interning at Women for Women International, doing all of that stuff. And it kind of came together when we had a family friend have really bad incontinence to the point where it affected her life to a point she wouldn't leave the house.
Oh, wow.
And so it wasn't something that you can come up with overnight. It happened throughout years and thousands of pages of paperwork through the FDA. We finally created the Yarlap. I realized that it wasn't something that just affected older women. I thought that it was something like, okay, diapers, just a part of your life as you get older. A lot of people have it. That's just the way the cookie crumbles. With doing all this research and all these meeting women, I realized it doesn't matter what age you are or anything like that. It purely matters about the tone of your pelvic floor muscles. But those muscles are often never talked about or often forgotten, or they're only discussed when you're in the middle of the issue.
Yeah. So just a little bit of background. Have you invented other devices? Do you have a medical background? Are you a therapist?
I am not a medical professional in any capacity.
Okay.
But I read so many medical journal articles about the pelvic floor that my head sometimes spins.
Right.
But my dad is a medical device engineer. So he has done designs and everything for women, the national healthcare system in Europe. So France, Great Britain, Scandinavia, all use postpartum pelvic floor re-education devices that he's actually designed, helped design.
Okay.
So,
and I have had 5 kids, and Mindy has had 4. And I know that I was never offered any pelvic floor re-education. Were you, Mindy?
No, not other than Kegel exercises, which I still didn't fully understand. It was talked about, but I'm like, what is that? What are you talking about? I don't know. I just noticed that when I started working out in my 30s, all the women just happened to wear black, workout pants for a reason.
Yes. And it wasn't just to make them look thinner.
No.
All right. Well, MaryEllen, let's talk about what is the pelvic floor, because I think we just need the basics, and why is it important?
Yeah, so the pelvic floor muscles are a group of muscles that, if you're like me and you're a visual learner, you can imagine this in your head. It's kind of like a hammock. So they zigzag around your pubic bone to the base of your spine, and they support these muscles like and they support your bladder, your uterus, and your visceral organs, and they hold them into position. So it's kind of like the foundation of a house that looks like a hammock. And over time, if you're not toning these muscles, keeping them in shape, they can sometimes weaken, atrophy, and they sag. So when they sag, you have this shift. All of a sudden, the bladder is at the very bottom of that pyramid, essentially.
Oh, okay.
And if you laugh, sneeze, cough, put any pressure, there's a lot of pressure that's then put right onto the bladder. You pee yourself a little bit, or if there's atrophy in the muscle, it can sometimes spasm and kind of give your bladder a hug, an unexpected hug. And then you pee yourself because you don't have that control anymore of those muscles to hold it in. And so it's really important for anybody, regardless of who you are, male, female, to tone these pelvic floor muscles. But for women, it's especially important because we go through pregnancy, childbirth, all these things that create pressure onto your pelvic floor. So it's really important to not only maintain that tone, but also to regain it after you've lost it.
Well, MaryEllen, this is a subject that's very, very close to my heart. I am still a personal trainer, typically more with midlife women than any other stage. Like I said, I joked that I noticed all the women in my exercise classes in the past would just be in black pants. And so the joke was like, if we had some sort of plyometric exercise, if we were doing any type of jumping or whatever, how many women would we lose going to the bathroom during that cardio set? And so I'm just curious, like, I kind of thought, like, is this a muscle that I'm like, well, we just can't do those exercises anymore, or you need to like tone it down with the plyometrics and do like non-jumping, cardio series. Is this something that's just par for the course? Can it be fixed if we haven't maintained it?
Yeah. So these muscles, they're often never talked about because we're not aware that they even exist, or we read about them in a sexual capacity.
Right.
But when it comes to like working out, that repetitive motion does cause pressure onto the pelvic floor. And a lot of people believe that this is just a card that they're dealt, that this is a part of their chapter of their life now. And that's not true. It's really about the tone of those muscles and keeping it. It doesn't matter what age you are. So if you have this issue and you're like, well, I've tried to do Kegels, I think.
I know, that's the key. I think I've done them right. Yeah. I don't know.
It's really great because like you now kind of are aware of these muscles and how to engage them properly and the resources and tools that are now available readily. But yeah, this is not something that you're like, oh, this is the rest of my life. I'm just going to have to deal with this, or I'm going to have to modify routines to accompany this pestering problem, because that's not true. It's really funny because my friends are now starting to have babies and have baby showers. And I'm now known in my friend group for bringing pelvic floor PowerPoints to these baby showers.
Oh, wow.
And giving presentations because one of my friends, she was pregnant, and at her baby shower, she laughed and she was like, oh, and they were like,
uh-oh.
And this was in the middle of like her unwrapping gifts. And I know her and she puts on a face, but I saw her face drop and I was like, oh, it's okay. Like, don't worry about it. Like, it's fine. And everyone's like, well, I'll get used to that. That's just like motherhood. Welcome to the club. And I don't know what happened, but I like whipped around and I was like, don't say that to her.
Right.
I was like, that's not true. She does not have to live with this for the rest of her life. Don't scare her.
Right.
And I had a keychain with a PowerPoint on it that I was going to go and drop off and get printed. And I was like, do you have a computer? Because I want to teach you guys something. And I'm not kidding. We took about a 10-minute break during this baby shower. And I brought up a PowerPoint presentation on her television connected to the computer and was like going through talking about the pelvic floor and why it's so important and like how it doesn't matter what age you are And if you've had kids or not had kids, if you're athletic or not athletic, it's just about the tone of these muscles, and you need to tone them properly and engage them fully to get the benefits of like what your doctor has been telling you to do, because it's not wrong. It's just really, really hard to do in practice.
Right. I'm so glad you brought that up, MaryEllen, because some of those common myths about the pelvic floor being as, oh, that just happens when you're older, that happens after you've had a child or multiple children. Like I have been in classes with women in their 20s through their 70s that they're all struggling with it, whether they've had a kid or not. So are there any other common myths about the pelvic floor?
Yes. So one of them that I try to tell everybody is that Kegels are not a one size fit all. They're not a miracle exercise. If you do them, it's not going to be like poof overnight. If you have a tightened pelvic floor, a hypertoned pelvic floor that are clenched involuntarily, or they're constantly clenched, doing a Kegel exercise and clenching those already clenched muscles, probably not going to work for you. You want to learn how to relax those muscles. So there are different types of exercises to do, and everybody's body is different. And so it's not going to be, here's the one true exercise to fix everything. That's not necessarily true. It's extremely common. So these are an exercise that are commonly told to do, but it might not be for everyone, especially if you have a tense pelvic floor. You probably want to do relaxation instead of Kegel exercises. And also another thing is that it's not going to be overnight. A lot of people are like, well, for instance, they'll be like, I got the Yarlap and it's been 2 days and I don't see anything. I'm like, it's muscle rehabilitation. Muscle rehabilitation, you have to understand, is going to take weeks. Whether you have a tool like the Yarlap or whether you're doing it by yourself, self-initiated, or you have something else, it is muscle rehabilitation. So you do have to be very patient and very kind to your body and know that it's not going to be like an overnight success.
What are some other myths that you hear about?
The big one is that it's just me, but that's not true at all. 1 in 3 women in the United States alone has this problem, urinary incontinence. So we all know somebody who's got it. And it might be us, it might be a sister, a mother, it might be a dear friend, but we all know somebody who has this. And I don't want anybody to think that they're alone in this, or that it's embarrassing, or that they should feel guilty about it, because they shouldn't. It's just a body part. It needs some help. It needs some love. And I don't want anybody to feel isolated or embarrassed about any part of their health. And I think that's a very common thing, is to kind of get into your own head and feel like you're isolated and feel like you're alone. And that's not true, because what is it? Nobody wants to talk about anything vaginal related. I'll talk to you about it all day. But I don't want anyone to ever feel like they are alone by themselves on an island when it comes to this issue, because you're not, by any means or any stretch of the imagination. And then I think another common myth is that Kegels are just used for sex. Because we tend to see them written in that capacity in mainstream media. And I think it's because sex sells. And so if you do say something like, this is going to be hot in the bedroom, people are more likely to click it than do this exercise, right? Like one is a lot more enticing than the other.
Right.
But I think we also tend to think of Kegels only in a sexual way, where it's like, okay, it helps all this stuff with the vagina. In reality, it's actually helping your pelvic floor muscles get toned, put into its natural position, and your clitoris runs right along the pelvic floor. So your clitoris, if we're allowed to go into the sexual aspect of it real quick, take a detour. Your clitoris, I always tell everybody, it's basically an iceberg. You can see 20%, but like 80% of it is hidden inside. It's massive. And your clitoris runs right along the pelvic floor muscles. And so when you are doing these exercises, your muscle knows and builds muscle memory. So when you are contracting during orgasm, that muscle movement, that clenching feeling, is actually your pelvic floor muscle doing a Kegel. and your body then kick in and respond and go, I know how to do this, and I know how to do it really well. I know how to do it stronger and better. And muscle memory kicks in. And so people who have more tone in their pelvic floor also have a tendency to have a higher response to orgasm because their body just like kicks in and goes, we know what we're doing. We know what we're doing, and we can do it really well.
Yeah.
Well,
So
we've
it's
never
not
talked
just-
about that, Marie.
No, we haven't.
So it's not just like it is commonly thought about in a sexual aspect.
Yes.
Because it does deal a lot with that, but it's also bladder control,
Yes.
posture, all these other different things, back pain, knee pain. It's a conglomerate of all of those things. It's just a sum of all those things. And sex just happens to be a small part of it, but it's extremely important. And it also tends to be the one that everyone clicks on because it's a fun, spicy little topic. You're more likely to click on that than,
Right.
do 400 reps of this exercise. It's like, I'm not going to click on that.
Right.
Well, now that we've gone there, in your email, you said something that I think is a common myth. And I think a lot of women think that. You said there's no such thing as a loose vagina. What did you mean by that?
So, yes. So this is like where I go back to the Kegel thing is people are like, well, I feel loose down there. It's like throwing a hot dog down a hallway. I'm like, first of all, never talk about your body like that. Never talk about your vagina like that. Never put yourself down. But you lose tone of the pelvic floor muscles. So it does, like we talked about, it does shift. It does feel different.
Right.
And the need to do a Kegel exercise, again, not necessarily for the vagina, it's to do pelvic floor muscle control to engage the clitoris, to engage those muscles that are actually responding and performing during orgasm. And so when you do tone those pelvic floor muscles, you're realigning and you're shifting things back into its natural position. And so people are like, well, I have a loose vagina. I'm like, no, you just have like this pelvic floor. You just need to engage your pelvic floor and kind of realign everything back into its natural position. It's about the pelvic floor muscles. And I can't stress that enough is that these muscles, even though we don't ever talk about them, they're integral to every aspect basically of our life, especially below the belt.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not necessarily about the loose vagina, it's about the lack of the pelvic floor muscles.
Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate hearing all of that because it's all based around our health. And I also appreciate hearing you liken this is what I tell women when I train them. It's going to take time to develop a new routine. It's going to take a couple of months to see some results because you're starting to build muscle. That muscle is going to start doing better things for your body. But just incorporating a new routine is amazing. And it's even like skincare, like you're not going to see immediate results. So I like that you're giving us a realistic idea of this is muscle training. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so
Right,
can
like
you,
it's not going to happen overnight.
yes, we can't expect immediate results. And so could you just describe what is pelvic floor therapy and who should consider going? What kinds of things would you do with the therapist? This is total new information for me. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
At Yarlap, we work with a lot of pelvic floor muscle therapists, and it's a specialty purely for the pelvic floor muscles. And so it's not just urinary incontinence. It can be bowel incontinence. It can be sexual dysfunction. So we were talking about muscles that are super tight and clenched. They help them relax those muscles, teach you how to do that, give you resources and tools how to help you with that. And also postpartum health, going through, there's so many different things that can happen through pregnancy and childbirth that sometimes your pelvic floor does need some extra time and love and a specialist to help you regain to where you were originally. Pelvic floor therapist, that is their whole specialty. And I personally believe every woman should go. It's kind of like therapy. I think everybody should go at least once just to check out and make sure everything is okay. Regardless of who you are. Men also have this, but women have it at a higher rate. So I tend to focus purely on women. Mm-hmm. But men also can go to pelvic floor physical therapy, and you can get different exercises to learn different tools, different resources to really engage these muscles and grow that muscle tone that's so important. Because again, you need to have tone in those muscles to get all the benefits that we've been talking about throughout this entire podcast. And again, easier said than done. So much easier said than done. And a physical therapist is kind of like your guide to get to point A to point B.
Okay.
And what kinds of things would they have you do? I know you've mentioned Kegels, but what other exercises might they have you do?
Yeah, so they have a lot of tools that are FDA cleared, right? So they're a medical device, they're a medical office, and a lot of them will use biofeedback devices so they can show you in real time what your muscle is doing or not doing, or if you're engaging the wrong set of muscles. Because a lot of times when we do Kegel exercise or we do muscle relaxation, we tend to engage other muscles that are not our pelvic floor. So you can end up using your rear end, your butt, your thighs, your abs. And if you're engaging those muscles, you're not really engaging the pelvic floor, right? Or you're not engaging it to its full entirety. And so they have a lot of devices that will show you like in real time that maybe you're not using the right muscles that you're supposed to be using, or maybe you don't have any control anymore and you're not using the muscles, period. And so you can kind of see and track yourself making those improvements through time. And again, it's not just Kegel exercises, but pelvic floor muscle relaxation. So like dilators or whatever you have that really teach you how to relax, different pattern ratios, because some people are like, well, I understand the idea of a Kegel, but am I supposed to clench for 20 minutes? No. But, or how, like, what are the work rest ratios? What are the work rest patterns for me that's not going to strain my muscles? Pelvic floor physical therapist, boom. So it's nice to have somebody who's there to spot you and to guide you and to give you really good, correct, accurate information.
Yeah. Proper form is exactly where it's at, which is why I personal train people. It's like you have to do the exercise the right way or you're going to hurt yourself or not benefit from it.
Exactly.
Right. People, if they are interested in pelvic floor therapy, how would they go about it? Would they ask their doctor to give them a referral? Do insurance companies cover this? What is the deal medically?
So health insurance is always changing, right? So you want to check with your health insurance first before you listen to me, who has absolutely no idea what your personal health insurance covers.
Right.
But I would look into it. Oftentimes your general doctor, your family doctor will have a specialist that they know that they recommend. Oftentimes you can actually just Google pelvic floor physical therapist and it'll be like pelvic floor physical therapist near me and do some research. Again, it's going to be like anybody where you might not like the first person you try. You might like the second person you try. Everybody's different. You might vibe with one physical therapist more than the other. Don't give up on the idea of it.
Right.
Is my situation.
Okay.
Right.
But I would check with your health insurance first, and you would have to go and call your health insurance.
Okay.
Or go online and see what it covers.
Oh, right.
But oftentimes the first few sessions will be covered. But again, check with your health insurance first before you take my advice.
Right.
My health insurance coverage.
Sure.
But yeah, I would look into it, especially if this is resonating with you. Yeah, look up pelvic floor physical therapy. I think it's great.
Okay. All right, MaryEllen, why don't you talk to us about the Yarlap, the device that you developed for the pelvic floor? When would that be appropriate? How does it differ from pelvic floor therapy?
The Yarlap is an FDA-cleared medical device to treat urinary incontinence, maintain continence through the pelvic floor muscles. And so what it does is you insert it like a tampon, and it sends a signal that's really comfortable into your pelvic floor muscles to do the exercises for you. So you don't have to sit there and think, okay, I got to move my muscles. I got to move the right muscles. I got to move these muscles. Can't forget about them. And I have to do them for, I have to sit here and do it for 20 minutes straight. The Yarlap does all of that for you. It does the entire exercise for you. So all you have to do is sit there. That's it. For 20 minutes. That's it. You just sit there. You can control the level where it's comfortable for you because everybody's vagina is different. Everybody's pelvic floor is different. So it's very customizable for comfort. That muscle movement level is customizable for you. I'm very biased, so I firmly believe that every woman needs to have a Yarlap. But if you've gone to physical therapy and they've told you to do these exercises, to learn to relax these pelvic floor muscles, to do Kegels, the Yarlap is a fantastic tool because it does what that person wants you to do, and it does it for you at home without the guesswork to make sure you stay on track with what they're saying and what they're asking to do, and you stay on their timeline. And
Wow.
so we don't work, it's not Yarlap or physical therapy. It's Yarlap and physical therapy, right? It's if your doctor has told you, if your OBGYN has told you to do these exercises, the Yarlap is a great tool to have in your corner because, like I said, just does everything for you because we already have so many things that we have to be worried about and that we have to constantly put into our routine that we have to think about. And this is just not something that we need to think about. This is just this is the Yarlap takes one aspect that we were panicking about.
Right.
And it just does everything for you. It takes that right out of your equation, out of the problem list, and just solution. Boom.
That sounds great because in every women's magazine you read an article about this to be like, while you're on the subway, clench and unclench 15 times. No one can tell what you're doing. And it's like, who even thinks of that when they're on the subway? Like, there's no... We don't get a lot of good direction on this.
No, we don't. Well, and realistically, how many times a week? Like I'm looking at this as a workout.
Right.
As you know, you talked about muscle recovery or rebuilding. And so how many times a week would you realistically use the Yarlap?
The Yarlap, you are only supposed to use 3 to 5 days a week.
Okay.
It's a comfortable muscle workout, but it is intense. So we really want to take those rest days very seriously. Because sometimes, and I know you're a personal trainer, so you have these people who are like, I have to work out twice a day, every single day, because that's how you get results. It's like, no,
you're actually going to hurt yourself. Yeah.
And so for us, it's extremely important that 3 to 5 days a week, 5 max, 20 minutes a day. That's it.
Perfect. Okay. Now I do want to go into the younger ages. Now, MaryEllen, you're not as old as Marie and I, which I love that you are talking about this because you're in your later 20s, but we have listeners who may not be experiencing any problems yet. So what can they do to stay that way and to also prevent future problems?
So what I would tell them is make sure that you're engaging their proper muscles. Because that's, again, that I think is what hinders a lot of people from doing these exercises properly, right? Like we just have no idea where those muscles even are.
Right.
And so even in your 20s, you can start getting the weakening of the pelvic floor muscles. So make sure that you're using and engaging those muscles correctly when you're trying to do a Kegel. And don't fall into the trap like I did, where you think that it only happens to older people, because that's not true at all. And it could happen a lot sooner than you imagine.
Right.
And so just make sure that you engage those muscles properly, that when you're trying to do a Kegel, again, it's kind of like a clench up. So a lot of people just clench. It's actually a clench and a pull up sensation. And so what I would suggest doing is if you have that continence and you have that tone of those muscles, really focus on the engagement of them and do them properly. And don't forget to do them. I know that it's really simple to forget about them, but it's really, really important that you don't.
Okay. I want to know how this is going to look realistically in my life, because anytime I go on a girls' trip with my friends, the joke is we got to make sure we're close to a bathroom. And, like we're just glad that we all have to go all the time. Trying to like go out and jump on the trampoline for an hour without peeing all over myself. But I want to know, like, what is this going to do for my everyday life? How is this going to improve? How often should I have to go to the bathroom? How often is too often?
Right. I think that everybody's different, especially if you drink a lot of water. Because I also was in that group where I was like, wait, am I peeing too much?
Right. Right.
And it's like, oh no, I'm just actually really well hydrated. It is fine. But if you're lapping, and again, I cannot diagnose,
Right.
so don't take anything as a diagnosis. This is not a diagnosis. But if you're realizing, you can't jump on the trampoline, you're laughing and you're peeing, coughing, sneezing, peeing, you randomly have the urge and you just like can't hold it, or you have an urge and you're like, oh, okay. And your body automatically goes, oh, okay, we only have like 3 minutes, or okay, we only have 5 minutes to make it to the bathroom. I would suggest going to your doctor and talking about this, because just because something is common does not make it normal. So if you have these things where it is making a problem, it is like a disturbance in your normal routine, and you're like, well, this wasn't a problem like 5 years ago. Go to your doctor, talk about that. I know that it might be uncomfortable, but it's so important to have that conversation, have that discussion, so you can treat it, that you can go back to like where you were, right? And you don't have to worry about jumping on the trampoline, coughing, sneezing, laughing, going to workout classes, going on road trips and having to plan out where every single rest stop is or every single gas station is on the way. My suggestion is, if there is a disturbance in your routine because of this problem, go to your doctor, because I can guarantee you it is not the first time that they've heard this. And I can guarantee you that you'll be a lot happier once you have that tone back than just assuming that this is the way the cookie crumbles.
Thank you. I love hearing that.
Yeah. I know several older women who have had bladder surgeries to help strengthen and support the bladder. And I just thought that was kind of like inevitable. If you have this problem, at some point you'll have to have, I don't know, I think they might be called like slings or different nettings that they use and they put in your body to kind of bring the bladder up where it should have been. Will pelvic floor therapy help us to avoid those surgeries, or is that just due to a completely different problem?
It could, yeah. So physical therapy, like I'm telling you, pelvic floor physical therapists are heroes. They're amazing. Again, that a lot of the times when they have atrophy, the weakening of the pelvic floor muscles, some people are like, well, I just don't have any more tone. Like it's just completely gone. I'm too old. I can't do this, whatever. And then you may go down the road of surgery. See a physical therapist. Go open up that conversation and be like, how do I regain this muscle tone? And if you have atrophy, if you have the weakening of the pelvic floor where you just can't hold it, it's severe, go to the physical therapist, because it isn't too late. That's another misconception, I think, is that people think once you get to a certain point, there's no return. And that's not true. It's just lack of muscle tone. Go to a physical therapist, go to your doctor, have that conversation to see if you need to do these exercise muscles or if you need to do the relaxation muscles. Figure out which path is correct for you. Get the tools that are appropriate for whatever they tell you to do, but don't fall into the trap of thinking this is a path of no return.
Okay.
Go to your doctor. Go see a physical therapist. Like,
yeah,
that would be my
yes.
And we're so reluctant. Like, I don't know why we are so reluctant. I mean, there'll be a lot of people that are listening today that are nodding their heads and saying, yes, I should do that, or yes, that's me. But there's something about the barrier of actually saying it out loud, or, is the pelvic floor therapist going to think I'm weird, or, like, just what's it going to be like? I think it's one of those things where talking about it kind of takes the stigma away, helps us to be more brave, helps us to find out some answers.
And I'm a very big proponent of pelvic floor physical therapists. Like I said, at Yarlap, we work with them very heavily. And I think that they're really amazing because there is that barrier of like, if I admit that I have a problem, it is a problem. And like, if I have that problem, is there anybody even there to help me? And there is. There is. And there are tools like the Yarlap to help you. So don't ever fall into that trap of like, it's too late. This is just me. There's nothing I can do. It's a problem that only affects me, because none of that is true. And so I think it's really important to have that conversation with your doctor. If they guide you to a specialist, pelvic floor physical therapy is really, really great. Don't think that this is something you have to settle for.
Okay. I looked up the Yarlap on Amazon, and it is a few $100s. Is that something that insurance companies ever cover?
Sometimes. So we don't bill insurance here in the office because, like I said, everybody's physical therapy, everybody's health insurances are different, coverages are different, and we're company. So we actually don't bill anything in the office. We do take HSA and FSA, so health savings accounts. We're eligible for that. But health insurance, self-claims, and we don't bill insurance, so you have to kind of look that up on your own.
Okay.
Right.
Well, you have been so helpful, MaryEllen. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of this with us. If people want to find you, where should they go and look?
Go to yarlap.com, or you can find us on Instagram at yarlap_OTC. And if you have any questions, shoot them at us.
Okay, that's great.
Can you spell Yarlap for us
Yes.
just to make sure?
YARLAP.com.
Okay.
All right, MaryEllen. Well, before we go, we always have a section in our podcast that is called I'm a Fan. MaryEllen, I can't wait to find out what you are a fan of this week.
Oh my gosh. I'm a fan of New Girl, even though it hasn't been on air in like 8 years.
Oh.
But I've been rewatching it for like the 10th time since the start of quarantine. I love that show so much, but I'm also into the podcast Crime Junkie.
Oh.
Because I'm a really big fan of true crime.
Oh, wow.
Which is really morbid. Some people are like, that's too morbid. Please stop talking about it. But I love true crime, and I love the podcast Crime Junkie. So those are the two things that I'm really, really big into. And I would say a book, but I just got the book for my book club, and I don't really know what it's about.
Oh, okay. Well, what's the title? Maybe one of us has read it.
The Last Patient.
Oh, I feel like that might be about a crime too, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So it's like a thriller or whatever. And one of my friends suggested it for this month. So I'll let you guys know if it's good or not, but I'm sure it's going to be great. You know, it's like those quick reads that you do on the beach or by the pool or something like that.
Yes.
You know, it's
my favorite.
even though it's snowing in Ohio.
Yeah, you're in good company with the crime stuff here. We love our true crime.
Yeah.
Yes, it's so good. It's so good.
Oh, well, that's great. All right, Mindy, what are you a fan of this week?
All right. I'm a huge fan of following Candace Cameron Bure on Instagram.
And who is she, Mindy?
Especially from Full House.
Oh, I was wondering if it might be her. Okay.
Yeah, she was DJ, and then Fuller House, of course, and then the Aurora Tea Garden mystery movies on Hallmark.
Okay.
Hallmark.
Yes. What I love about her Instagram page is after watching the Super Bowl last night and watching Mr. Midlife 43-year-old Tom Brady win the Super Bowl. Well, I'm sorry, lead his team to win the Super Bowl. I'm like, these 40-year-olds have got it going on. Candace Cameron Bure is 44, and she has been on a health journey herself and a fitness journey. And she is just very encouraging. She's also a Christian woman. And so like she shares all the things that I love. She's talking about the Bible. She's talking about fitness. She's talking about food, and she looks incredible at 44. And so I love following her Instagram.
Oh, that's cool. Well, we'll put a link to that in our show notes. We'll also put a link to your podcast and show that you recommended, MaryEllen. I am a fan of something that has been making our life easier. We just had hardwood floors installed upstairs, and my husband travels, and to help him out, I wanted to move a lot of the furniture down the hallway to one room that we weren't having done. And I've heard about these things before, but I haven't used them myself. They're called super sliders, and they enable you to move furniture either on carpet or on hardwood, depending on your surface. So you have 4 discs, and you either put a fuzzy lamb's wool type thing on if you're moving across hardwood floors, or you use just the disc by itself if you're moving the furniture across carpet. I was moving large dressers with the clothes and drawers still in it myself by just lifting up the corner, sliding this disc under, and moving it out the door of the bedroom and all the way down the hallway. So if you have some projects that you want to do in the new year and you don't want to ask anyone in your house, get these super sliders. They're like $10 at Lowe's, and you can do it all by yourself and save your back.
Absolutely. Like without ruining the floors.
Right. Yes. You do not ruin the floors. Yes.
Because I have done that before. Piano on hardwood floors, not a good mix.
No. All right. Well, MaryEllen, thank you so much. Listeners, go and look up yarlap.com or find them on Instagram. And listeners, if you want to find us on Instagram this week at Midlife Matters Podcast, MaryEllen is going to share a code with us that you can use to get $35 off your own Yarlap. So we will put that in our links, and we encourage you to go and use that. Thank you, MaryEllen.
Yes,
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you for coming on, MaryEllen. I know that there are going to be people that are seeking out pelvic floor therapy and the Yarlap based on listening today.
Yes. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really, really fun. Thank you.
All right. Well, we will talk to you later. Bye-bye, guys. We're so happy you joined us today. You can find the show notes for this episode at midlifematterspodcast.com. Also, please tell a friend about the show and help them hit the free subscribe button on their favorite podcast app. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast. That's where we post pictures and stories about all the things we talk about in each episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.